Hello, welcome everyone. Good morning. Welcome to this EURES webinar on the release of the 2024 EURES report on labor shortages and surpluses. I see that some of you are still joining. If you're here, you can also say hello in the chat and present yourself. Of course, this is entirely optional. During this webinar is called Release of the EURES Report on Labor Shortages and Surpluses 2024. And the webinar has three main objectives. First of all, to present the results of the 2024 edition of the report, to showcase the improved dashboard on the transnational mobility matching potential between shortage and surplus occupations, and to provide hands-on guidance and practical explanations on how to use the information sources, findings, and dashboards. Before we delve into the webinar, I will briefly present the agenda. The webinar will include presentations from two representatives of the European Labour Authority. Jakub Kostolny will present the outcomes of the 2024 edition of the report on labour shortages and surpluses, while Robert Komaromi will describe how information on labour shortages and surpluses can be used in practice. He will also run a demonstration on the interactive dashboard on transnational mobility matching potential and present use cases for EURES activities. Each presentation will be followed by a Q&A session, during which speakers will answer your questions. You can ask your questions via the chat function on YouTube throughout the course of the webinar. So feel free to start posting questions in the chat even before the beginning of the Q&A. And now, without further ado, I will leave the word to the first speaker of this session, Jakub Kostolny. And Jakub, you can also say a few words about yourself if you like, and start with the presentation.
Perfect. Thank you very much. Hope you can see my screen already. So as was already mentioned, I will introduce the report on labor shortages and surpluses 2024, where we did the data collection basically last year. Now we are publishing the report. It should be out on the website of EURES any minute or right after this webinar. My name is Jakub Kostolny. I work as a EURES data analysis officer within the information and EURES unit at ELA. Regarding the outline of my presentation, I will first provide some economic and mobility context in the EU. Then I will show and explain the main findings regarding the shortage and surplus occupations and uncover some trends which we found. And then I will delve into the theme of transportation and storage sector, which is the one sector which we looked at this year. And I will also show some of the policy pointers or what could be done about the shortages, what we find in the report. So I will start without further ado. So with regards to the economic context in the EU, overall, the EU labor market showed huge resilience to economic shocks. During the observed period, there was the COVID-19 pandemic, then the Russia's invasion on Ukraine, which meant that a lot of people had to flee the country, and the EU labor markets integrated more than 4 million people. The graph or the figure, which is shown below, actually shows the some of the main indicators on the labor market. So we can see the trend from 2021 until 24. That we see a steady increase in the employment rate. Also, the participation rate was increasing in the period, while unemployment rate conversely was decreasing. What we see is also that the vacancy rate or the number of unfilled vacancies was relatively stable around 2.5%. But overall, again, to underline, very strong performance of the EU labor market. Another point to highlight is that female employment rate has been increasing. It was 1.8 percentage points between 2019 and 2023. But despite all these good signs on the labor market, we still observe challenges which are related to labor market tightness and skills mismatches. And on top of that, what we expect or what we would foresee or economists would foresee is that consumption should be the main driver of the growth in the EU in the next year and the upcoming years. What could be expected is that disposable incomes will be increasing and inflation was set to decrease. So therefore, wage growth will be driven partly by this labor market tightness. Another indicator I wanted to show to illustrate the labor market is the beverage curve. It shows the relationship between unemployment rate and the JVR, or the vacancy rate. So over a longer period of time. So for the working age population, 20 to 64-year-olds, what we see that actually it was a period of tightening. So we went from 2014 with a very high unemployment rate. The unemployment rate has been decreasing over this period, while the vacancy rate has been increasing. Actually, the unemployment rate decreased from 11% to only 4.5%, while the JVR increased from 1.5 to 2.8%. So basically, this shows that the relationship between the two indicators is negative. So as vacancies rise, the amount of unemployment falls. Okay. With regards to mobility, just a picture from 2023. This is based on the intra-EU mobility report. In 2023, there were 10.1 million working age EU movers. So those are citizens who reside in a EU country other than their country of citizenship. With regards to the main destination country, it was Germany, 34%. And the main countries of origin were Romania, a quarter of EU movers, Poland, or Italy. In this period, what we also saw is that almost 750,000 of EU workers moved back to their countries of origin. There was a rise compared to the previous year. Also, cross-border work represents a big chunk of mobility. There was 1.8 million people who worked in a different, lived in one country, but lived in another one. Posted work, also an important element of mobility. There's been 5.5 million posting declarations. And in the period of 21 and 22, the number of non-EU nationals increased substantially in the EU workforce. It was 3.3 million people. Now to the causes of the labor market imbalances. Here is a figure which basically shows that there is a variety of factors which include both the supply and the demand side, both on the side of the workers and the companies. So as was already mentioned, of course, there are still persistent labor shortages in various sectors and occupations, and some of these structural factors include, for instance, external shocks. So that's COVID-19 or the Russian aggression. Then there is the workforce demographics, which could be that the workforce is aging. So we have a lot of old workers who need to be replaced over time as they retire. And also the other part is the participation of the young workforce on the labor market. Then there is, for instance, female participation rate, or that the education levels of the employees are, say, changing, and there are different required skills in different occupations. There are employment conditions which affect the supply and demand. for instance, part-time work or temporary work contracts. That's also a factor both for the job seekers willing to take up employment, but also for companies when they need sudden spikes in their demand for their services. Working conditions, that's the attraction to specific occupations or jobs. These seem to vary. For instance, with regards to health and safety, COVID-19 was let's say the health and care stuff took a huge hit during this, and a lot of people left the job. Also, there was more demand for the health and care workers. But in some occupations, people have to face non-standard working hours or schedules, long periods away from home. For instance, in the transport sector, the working hours can change, and also wages affect highly the attractiveness of each job. Another factor which affects the mismatch or the imbalance is the changing of the business models. For instance, again, the COVID-19 and the surge in the e-commerce shifted basically the way we buy things, and it actually affected the entire sector. A lot of people went into platform work, etc. So the businesses are changing as well. And of course, a big factor is the greening of jobs, which is actually means that new skills are required on the labor market, and also new jobs are emerging while old ones are diminishing. Now, why does EURES report on labor shortages and surpluses? So for context, which I was now explaining, actually a quarter of European companies report that they face difficulties in finding employees with the right skills. Almost, 77% report that newly recruited employees do not have the required skills. And this basically means that it has negative consequences on the labor market if it's not unaddressed, or if it's unaddressed for both employers and workers. A tight labor market, on the one hand, it improves the bargaining position of workers and job seekers, so they're able to attain higher wages, for instance. But possibly it could affect their working conditions, specifically regarding working hours or work intensity, because if there is insufficient labor supply, other workers have to take up the job. On the other hand, for employers, labor shortages result in a higher job turnover costs, or reduced productivity, or reduced growth potential. Also, this could be an obstacle in the long-term growth or investment. So EURES reports on this, first of all, based on the EURES regulation. We have to actually collect and analyze information on the labor shortages and surpluses, but also it's a very interesting and very up-to-date topic that is very challenging on the EU labor market. Our objective at EURES is to identify shortages and surpluses and try to indicate their severity of the shortage or surplus. And also, in order to support transnational EU mobility, we seek to uncover the matching potential or matching opportunities, which Robert will explain. The methods which we deploy is that we mostly and most importantly rely on our NCOs, the national coordination offices, for their input in the identification of the shortages and surpluses. But we also try to bring in other secondary sources, such as the labor force survey of Eurostat, SEDEFOP skills forecast, and multiple other literature which we study with our contractors who do the field work and the work on the report. And last but not least, we have our stakeholders, trade unions, employers, and who we consult when we draft this report. There has been 5 focus groups organized, and hereby I would like to thank the ETF and the IRU for their very valuable support and the information they have provided, because this is a qualitative type of information which we couldn't otherwise get. This leads me to the labor market mismatch identified in 2024. On the left-hand side, we see a map of shortages and the number of shortages identified in a country. On the right, there is the number of surpluses. Basically, this year, there has been a slight increase in the number of both shortages and surpluses. This is partly due to change in our methodology, because now we actually ask the correspondents to select a status for each and every ISCO occupation, but also there has been changes on the side of the NCOs in how they define a shortage or surplus. From a regional perspective, what we could observe is that countries in the Southern and Eastern Europe frequently identify the large number of shortages. For instance, Malta, Slovakia, Bulgaria, Italy, or Romania. But also, it's not a regional issue only, because in Northern and Western Europe, also, for instance, Belgium, Netherlands, Germany, or Denmark report a high number of shortages. I will get to the surpluses later, but what we see is actually, or an observation is that we don't observe a clear relationship between the labor market situation and the number of shortage occupations identified. And also, there seems to be no clear link between the number of shortages and number of surpluses identified. And one addition is that besides the transnational differences, there could be also regional differences within the country in terms of the demand of and supply of workforce or labor. So for this, we have actually added a new status which says both shortages and surpluses, but I will also explain this in the next slides. So in terms of most common shortage occupations, what we actually see is that our correspondents identify more than 3,000 instances of shortages altogether. They cover 98% of all the ISCO occupations, of the more than 400 ISCO occupations, and 29 countries report a shortage. In terms of the basically generic or general occupational groups, in terms of shortages, most are identified in the craft and related trades work, plant and machine operators, in the group of professionals or service and sales workers. But also, this seems to indicate that its shortage occupations are connected only to distinct and recognizable tasks. But at the same time, there are elementary occupations or clerical support workers which do not require such a high skill level. Then in terms of more specific, more detailed ISCO 4-digit occupations, we see that we call them widespread shortage occupations. Welders and flame cutters have been identified as the highest shortage in terms of 23 countries. In terms of healthcare, there is nurses, specialist medical practitioners, also general practitioners, or physiotherapists. Then there's occupations such as cooks, construction workers, plumbers. In terms of transport, there is the truck drivers and lorry drivers. So there is a wide range of occupations which are actually recurring in the reports over time. In terms of the severity, the highest share of severe shortages is in the plant and machine operators and assemblers, but also professionals and elementary occupations tend to be very severe in terms of shortages. Now let me go on to the next slide. This is a plot of the number of shortage occupations and the vacancy rate, by the EURES countries. So in most countries, what we observe is that the relationship between the shortages and the JVR is positive, meaning that higher vacancy rate indicates replacements needs, and it's an indicator of economic growth. In terms of what needs to be mentioned is that in terms of the size of occupation, it could be that in some countries there is actually a lower number of shortage occupations, but these can represent a larger share of employment. So it could essentially mean that there is a higher JVR, but there are a lower number of shortages identified. What I would like to highlight here, an interesting example, is that the difference in methods of how the various countries identify a shortage. For instance, Bulgaria, which is highlighted, it has a low vacancy rate, but a high number of shortages, while the situation in Austria is actually the opposite. But this is partially caused by the method or methodology, where in Bulgaria, a shortage is identified if the ratio of job seekers to vacancies is lower than 20. But in Austria, it's more, it's the threshold is lower or higher, I mean, and actually a shortage is only if the ratio is below 1.4. So what we observe here, there is some indication of the relationship, but there is the hidden caveats, for instance, regarding the methods or actually the share of the employment by specific occupations. So it has to be interpreted with caution. Regarding the widespread shortage occupations, this year we looked at the change in employment for the most widespread shortage occupations. So there are 45 occupations, of which 14 saw a decline in employment, while 31 of these experienced an increase. Here is just a piece of these or a part of these. Actually, between 2021 and 2023, there has been an increase in employment in general from almost 40 million to 41.5 million in terms of workforce in these occupations. This has been an increase after the COVID-19 pandemic. In terms of sectors, for instance, in healthcare, a high increase of GPs or physio by 9 and 7%, but also hospitality has recorded the highest increase in employment. For instance, chefs back after COVID were rehired, increased by 35%, or waiters by 27%. So that's the up for I mean the upper part of the graph, which has the increase about higher than 5%, but the substantial decline has been identified in 6 countries at the bottom of the chart, and this could be potentially because of an aging workforce or unattractive working conditions. And also there could be gender imbalances, or these jobs basically struggle to attract young talent. For instance, it could be electrical engineers, carpenters, joiners, food and product machine operators. So these shortage occupations actually recorded a decline in employment. Back to the surplus occupations now. So like shortages, in the surplus occupations, there's been more than 2,500 instances of surpluses. Only 25 countries reported surplus compared to 29 shortage. The highest numbers were in Spain, Austria, Latvia, Portugal, and Finland, and these account for more than half of the surpluses identified altogether. At the same time, the lowest numbers were indicated in Netherlands, Croatia, Estonia, France, and Norway. In terms of the broad occupational groups, Surplus workers tend to be in clerical support work, elementary occupations, and professionals, but specifically in relation to the design-related occupations. Partly, these jobs could be highly endangered by automation. In countries, say, graphic and multimedia designers are in surplus, cleaners and helpers, freight handlers, secretaries, office clerks, car and taxi drivers, or shop sale assistants. As I already mentioned, the both shortage and surplus status has been identified in 8 countries. This indicates that there are regional differences in terms of demand and supply within the country. Again, in the broad occupational groups of service and sales workers, for instance, cooks, waiters, bartenders, hairdressers are often mentioned as both surplus and shortage, or painters, butchers, food preparers, and also cleaners, helpers, hotel and other establishments. So there are basically regional differences in in the demand for these occupations. This is just to highlight this, or Belgium, Hungary, Slovakia, Portugal identify quite a few. With regard to the characteristics of the workers in both shortage and surplus occupations, altogether, in terms of the EU labor force, it's 70.5 million workers in the widespread shortage and surplus occupations. So it's roughly more than a third of employment. There are big gender disparities. This has been a recurring trend in the editions of the report. Women make only 29% of the shortage occupations, but more than 62% of the surplus occupations. Partly, this is because shortage occupations are often in fields such as construction and engineering, which are still male-dominated. At the same time, women are overrepresented in surplus occupation of clerical positions. Another characteristic or trait is that younger workers seem to be underrepresented in shortage occupations. This could guide us to basically say that upskilling of the workers and certifications and training is needed for the young workforce in order to replace the aging and soon retiring workers. And also better conditions are needed in order to attract the young workforce. Older workers, there is the risk of the aging population, which was mentioned. In terms of the education, the characteristic is that only that in tertiary education, it's a third of workers, so 33% of workers in shortage occupations have a tertiary education, while in surplus it's only 1/5. So it seems that education seems to be basically in favor of the workers who are seeking jobs. And of course, tertiary education is prevalent in healthcare or engineering professions. And medium education, in terms of levels, is common for both shortage and surplus occupations. Of course, the nature differs, and this could be, again, linked to the training and certification needed. In shortages, it's often vocational, so very specific training, while in surplus occupations, it's often very general type of education. Okay. Then regarding multiple vulnerabilities, so I already pointed towards some of the vulnerabilities by groups, but this year we actually focus on multiple vulnerabilities or more than one vulnerability overlapping and try to characterize these workers in the report. So it is often the overlapping vulnerabilities are often present among some of the surplus occupations. Often it's more than one of the type of vulnerability, even 3 helpers. There is 3 overlaps, so it's predominantly women, those with dual education, and oftentimes youth or mobile migrant workers. In terms of another field, for instance, service and sales workers, it's very female dominated. Cashiers and clerks, 83% of them are women. Shop assistants, 70%, or hairdressers, 80% almost. For instance, then another group or another overlap is for cashiers. It's oftentimes younger and less formally educated workers. So cashiers, 83% women. More than a third of them are youth or young, and a quarter of them are well-educated workers. Reception is the same. And then another combination, which is a vulnerability, low education and high share of migrant workers, for instance, gardeners or horticultural workers. And the last one, kind of from a higher education or skill level. So, for instance, translators, interpreters, and linguists tend to be overrepresented by women and migrant workers. So this is, let's say, a characteristic that needs to be looked at or taken with care, that some workers face multiple vulnerabilities on the labor market. I'm now moving towards the specific sector, just to provide you with an overview. So this year we focused on the transportation and the storage sector, where we actually approached this by looking at the 5 subsectors, which are the water transport, air, warehousing, postal and courier activities, and the land transport. There's been 5 focus groups organized by our contractors, and where we consulted our stakeholders. Again, I would like to really thank the IRU and the ETF for the support and their input. So in terms of the definition of the sector, it's a very fundamental sector of the EU economy. Basically, it helps us deliver essential goods and services to EU citizens and businesses. It employs more than 11 million people and accounts for 5.2% of the EU workforce, refers to less than 5% of the gross value added. And there are more than 1.3 million companies which operate in this sector. So why we picked this sector is that this sector actually covers a lot of important shortage occupations, for instance, bus and tram drivers, truck drivers, or mobile plant operators. And why I won't go into detail, of course, there is no space for this in this webinar, but I invite you to read the report and the subsectoral fiches in further detail. But some of the factors which were identified why these shortages occur. For instance, there is unattractive working conditions, there is demographic change, so a lot of high share of old workers. There is oftentimes a skills mismatch between the job requirement and the available skills. Bad working contracts, for instance, a lot of undeclared work or bogus self-employment. And COVID-19 has been a big hit for the entire sector. It has disrupted the training and certification processes, but also the demand for the work. So as the stakeholders mentioned in the focus groups, there are a lot of examples, narratives about how the COVID-19 affected each of these subsectors. There is a huge surge in the e-commerce, so increase in the last mile delivery, a much higher frequency of deliveries, and more workers required in the warehousing sector. There's also a lot of precarious work involved. And just an illustration, there is a high share of old workers. For instance, bus and tram drivers, they exhibit a very large age disparity and a very high share of workers who are 50 and above and are going to retire soon, basically. It's expected that 53% of bus and tram drivers will leave the workforce within the next 15 years. And actually, it suggested that it could be a shortage of almost 400,000 bus and tram drivers in the near future. So these will be basically need to be replaced and trained in order to fill these positions. Of course, there is the potential of automation that could help us in this challenge. Then regarding the workforce, for instance, the COVID-19 mentioned by our stakeholders affected the air transport sector. There was a sharp rise in precarious work. For instance, a lot of the more experienced older air crew retired or changed sectors during the pandemic, and they were replaced by younger and less experienced workforce. Also, the engine mechanics and repairers were often went into early retirement or were offered early retirement. So again, experienced staff, which was impossible to be replaced quickly, left. And there was a huge struggle to recruit the baggage handling personnel because first a lot of people were made redundant and then they struggled to replace them. Also, the water transport sector, it has been reported that, for instance, Finland, just a specific example, the workforce now shifted to those who are age 60 and more, while before the pandemic, it was those aged between 40 and 50. And a huge problem was caused by the pause in the training and hiring during COVID. So this even deepened the problem with the shortages in occupations such as locomotive drivers, heavy truck drivers, and lorry drivers, and the mechanics, for instance. In terms of the reasons for shortages, I already mentioned a few, such as the aging workforce or older workers force retiring, but there is also the occupational safety. So oftentimes the transportation and storage sector is dangerous, very physically demanding, and the working conditions reduce the attractiveness. This fact can also deter women or people with disabilities from joining this sector. There could be a lack of sanitary provisions or safety measures, and of course, it's highly affected by the working conditions, the non-standard working hours, long stretches away from home, and of course, there is a high. This sector is highly competitive. There is a changing business model, which is leading to increased competition and then therefore lower wages in the sector. Also, the sector has a low unionization rate, so the trade union membership is very low in this sector, which is hard for social partners to basically bargain on the workers' rights and protection. So I really invite you to look into the subsectors and the fishes and the narratives that we have illustrated for these sectors, which are available on the EURES site. And now let me move on to what could be done about the shortages. So this was basically a very high-level overview of what we report in the report. From a perspective of EURES, some policy pointers could be made or could be referenced. So what we believe would help is the improved labor mobility, transnational matching or regional matching. Robert will actually address this and talk about this shortly. But otherwise, what EURES and the EURES advisors could do is and what could help us in the longer run is we could take advantage of the new technology, the AI tools or the machine learning techniques to basically help us collect the data better and analyze it better. What could also be done is create new channels such as new dashboards or basically improve in the disseminating of the job opportunities, trying to attract but maybe some of the workers who are now not involved on the labor market or in the specific jobs or occupations. We also believe that the information and support for potential workers is very important. For instance, to know about the working conditions, cost of housings, net wages, basically to know about the systems in the different countries in order to attract and basically motivate the workforce to move. And we also believe collecting the shortage data as detailed and as up to date as possible could be of help. Also, if we were able to get the geographical location of the workplace, basically to be able to collect this the shortages by region, that would be of help. And if it's possible to look at the specific skills required or educational requirements, they could be help as information for the job seekers. And before closing, let me just point you towards the shortages section on the EURES portal. It can be found under the living and working. There's a dedicated section on shortages and surpluses. And as mentioned, the report will be there shortly after the webinar. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you, Jakub, for the presentation. Before we go ahead with the second presentation, I would like to ask the participants, the audience, if they have any questions. If you do, you can either post them in the chat or send them to the email address that we have posted in the chat. I see that there's already one question for you, Jakub, and the question is, I'm reading the comment. So I still have difficulty understanding how you analyze gender bias in shortage occupations. I understand in surplus as a shortage. So how are you analyzing gender bias in shortage occupations and surplus?
Yeah, basically, in terms of the characteristics of the workforce, we requested special labor force survey extractions from the Eurostat, and basically we look at the proportions or at the specific occupations which were identified as widespread shortages, and we try to characterize them. So basically, what is the proportion of women in these shortage or surplus occupations?
Okay, thank you. And I actually also have a question. So in your presentation, you said that women make up 29% of shortage occupations, but 62% of the surplus, if I understood correctly. Do you see any changes with respect to previous editions of the report? So has this number changed? Do you have this answer?
I mean, I don't have the specific number, but unfortunately, this trend seems to be very stable, and this is a recurring trend. Basically, we see over the edition. So, unfortunately, women are underrepresented in shortage occupations because of their nature. As I mentioned, construction work, for instance, engineering roles are often male-dominated, while
Okay.
the opposite is the case. Yeah.
Yes, thank you. And if I may, I have another question. So at the very end of your presentation, you proposed some bullet points on what could be done about shortages. For example, getting real-time data, etc. Are there any initiatives at national or EU level that you know of that are going into these directions that you proposed?
I don't have the specific examples at hand, but basically what I can say is also that the report does a mapping of all the kind of national initiatives of basically efforts to quantify shortages or surpluses, how many actually are needed, what workforce does it refers to. And these were really just policy recommendations which are EURES relevant, but there is also, we formulated wider policy recommendations of in terms of upskilling, reskilling, and what would be necessary in order to basically adapt to the challenges stated.
Perfect. Thank Thanks a lot. And maybe as a final question, unless there are more in the chat. So in the early part of your presentation, you said that there has been an increase in labor market shortages and surpluses due to the change in the methodology used, if I understood correctly. So despite this, what are the main takeaways in terms of longitudinal trends? Can you still make some conclusions in this regard?
I wouldn't like to draw conclusions based on the identification of shortages, but I think it's important for us to focus on these occupations and then analyze them with more care. Basically, it could be that a country reports few shortages, but these could refer to a large workforce or a large part of employment. So even with a low number of shortages identified, there could be cases that it's actually a lot of people who are in shortage. So this is something we're trying to address, and we're trying to bring further improvements in the upcoming editions of the report.
Okay, thanks a lot. And I see a question in the chat. Do you have any proof that the aging of the workforce led to more tightness or more shortage occupations?
I think this is just trends that we observe, and we don't really have a proof that we can basically identify the causality of this, but yeah, it's a general labor market trend, and so it's an indication.
Okay, thanks a lot. I don't see any other questions in the chat. So if this is the case, I would suggest that we move to the second part of the webinar. And I will therefore leave the word to Robert Komaromi. So,
thank you, Federica, and thank you, Jakub, for your excellent presentation. Good morning, colleagues. Here is Robert Komaromi from Bratislava, from ELA, and then in the next 20 minutes, let's say 30 minutes, you will have a presentation in two parts. In the first part, I will highlight how you can use the transnational matching potential in the dashboard, so how you can surf through the data. And in the second part, we created a practitioner digest, a practitioner information about how you can use the dashboard, how you can use EURES shortage and surplus information on your daily base, on your daily routine. So this is going to be the second part of my presentation. But before I go to the detail, I have a message to our colleagues. As I see now, we have more than 200 viewers in this webinar. Please note that this is a webinar and this is not a one-way street. So we are looking for your questions. I mean, we are confident what we are going to say. We know the report very well. We know the dashboard. We know how to use. We will present it, but the aim is also to have an exchange. Please feel free to use the chat, not to be shy, and let us know what you think, what questions you have. And also, as you know, this is an annual edition of the report, so we would like to also learn from you how we can address new challenges in the next editions of the report. Okay, so let me share my screen shortly, and then in the first part of my presentation, I navigate you through the data dashboard in 5 steps. This is step 0, step 1, step 2, step 3, step 4, and finally, I have a dedicated request and a polite question to you. So let me share my screen, and I'm going to start with the report that Jakub just presented you. If you go to the report, and now it is published on the ELA site, you can see on page 118, so-called Annex 5, transnational matching possibilities to alleviate labor market imbalances in the European employment service countries. In this table, you can see all in the left column, you can see all the ISCO occupations, all the reported ISCO occupations by the countries, starting in alphabetic order. And you can see in the middle column, the countries who are reporting this specific occupation as shortage occupation, for example, Austria, Belgium, Switzerland, Germany, and so on. And in the last column on the right-hand side, you can see the countries reporting this specific occupation as surplus. So in the report, reading the report or searching keywords, occupations in the report as a PDF, you can have all the information that is currently in the dashboard. But of course, the dashboard can give you specific information and a little bit interactive tool. Now I change my screen and we are on the EURES portal. I think this was one of the last page that Jakub presented you. You go please to the EURES portal. We can manage this together. Then click on living and working conditions. And then in the third link, you go to labor shortage and surpluses in Europe. And then here we are immediately with the 24 edition of the report. As all the webinar, which is organized by the EURES Training Provider, are recorded, and you can find this later on the YouTube channel. But if you miss the link, you can click here, and then you can download or you can preview the dashboard manual. Let's wait a little bit to see what's coming. So this is the manual to the dashboard, what I'm going to present you. You can see here the print screens, you can see the navigation. So everything you can find later on the EURES portal. Okay, now I close this one and go above to the data bank. Okay, let's wait a little bit. Most probably 200 colleagues are just checking the data. Therefore, I have an issue here. Okay, so the first is step one is the map. So you see the map of Europe. And as default setting, you can zoom in, you can zoom out, you can have full screen, and you can print it out. So these are the basic functions. This menu bar is always on the right-hand side. If you see the map of Europe, maybe two things what we need to know. First of all, this is more than the more than the EU member states. As you see, we have Switzerland in the middle of Europe. We have Norway on the map, as in the EURES network, we have Switzerland, Norway, Liechtenstein. Unfortunately, we have no data from Iceland, therefore Iceland is white. Otherwise, all the EURES countries presented data to us. The second question what we need to know, why some countries are dark blue and other countries, let's say, light blue. As default, which is actually doesn't work in my screen, maybe I am too fast. Yes, now I see Germany. Germany is somehow between light blue and dark blue. It means that Germany reported 195 occupations, and out of these 195, 159 are reported as shortage occupation and 37 reported surplus occupation. So if you want to know what countries are reporting to us, you just navigate to the screen, and the pop-up windows show you how the labor market imbalance is heavy, how it is severe, and you can see also the numbers on the map. So this is what you can do. All the countries are here, inclusive. I just zoom in. I just would like to show you that we have still Malta on the map. Malta reporting also is in the dark zone, dark blue zone. Malta is one of the most severe country regarding shortage and surplus occupations. So all the EURES countries are on the map. So that was the first step, to show you the map. I go to the second part, the table form that I mentioned. If you use the dashboard during the last 2 years. It is very similar to you. If you are new, I give you, and I never used this data bank, I will show you some options. As default, you can see the shortage occupations on the left-hand side. You can see the surpluses on the right-hand side, saying all the countries, all the ISCO 4 codes, and the title of that specific occupation. So if you go down, total down, you see Slovakia. This is the last country in alphabetic order, and the first country in Austria. So you can have all the data per country reported shortage or surplus occupations. If you want to prepare a report, or you want to know the data in XLS form, you just click here, a pop-up window is coming, you can click here, and then an XLS file is just opening, and you have all the data in XLS form, starting with Austria and ending with Slovakia, if you want to use the data in your daily work. Okay, let's go to see a dedicated country. So let's choose, for example, Belgium, not to start always with Austria. Let's choose Belgium. So then, as you have seen maybe shortly, this column, this table had been changed, showing only the Belgium shortage occupations. So if you go down, you have only the Belgian data. Again, if you click here, you can export, but then the export function show you only the Belgium data. So not the total, not the whole database, but only the German data, only the Belgium data. Okay, so let's go a little bit right. If you go to the individual occupations, these are the ISCO codes. You have different options here. The first option is that you use the default list of occupation. Let's start again with the first one. If you then click here, accountants, and then close, you see then the shortage occupations in Belgium. It means accountants is shortage occupation in Belgium. Then on the right-hand side, you can see the possible matching options, but we speak about this option later. You see the countries reporting surpluses, accountants. If you deselect Belgium, then you see, because now it's deselected, you see all the countries reporting accountants as shortage occupation. I try to speak slowly, and again, the video is recorded, so you can go back to the YouTube anytime. You can stop then the play and go back 10 minutes or 10 seconds to listen again what I mentioned, and then please not to forget that you have the manual. You can download the manual, and what now I am saying is written in the manual. So no worries if you lost the line. The second thing what I would like to show you a function to clear all, and then if you go back to the list of occupation, you can also use this box. This is a Google-like search option, so you can type. I put now DR because drivers are the most wanted occupations in Europe, I guess. But then DR and drivers then contains more and more occupations. So you can have bus and tram drivers, you can have car and taxi, and van drivers, You can have driving instructor, and so on and so on. Hand and pedal vehicle drivers, so a lot of driver, heavy and truck and lorry drivers. So here I would like to just highlight that you don't need to remember for the whole term of the single occupation. You just then click, select this box and type some character, maybe the first character, maybe the last character, and then the list helps you to find what you are looking for. So that was the individual occupation to select. Let's say we are looking for bus and tram drivers. Then close. Then it means these countries, Belgium, Bulgaria, Czechia, Germany, and so on, are in shortage. So these occupations are in shortage list. These are in the shortage list. And these countries, Austria, and Finland, Spain, and Greece, have surpluses. So it may happen that these countries on the right-hand side who have surpluses can cooperate with the countries under the EURES umbrella to reduce labor market imbalances between the countries. And this is the point where we need to scroll down. But before I scroll down, again here, if you click here and export the results, you can get that table which is on the left-hand side, reporting the countries with bus and what was the name of this occupation? Bus and tram drivers and shortages. Okay, so the export function is always exporting what you see here in the left-hand side. Okay, so then go down. I will clear this. Okay, so we go back to the original list, and then lastly, the last option is to speak about the matching option, the matching potential. This is again very simple. On the left-hand side, you see the map of Europe, EURES countries. Right-hand side, you see the surpluses. It means that Spain reported 47 shortages. Again, similar, I mentioned this to you in the step 1. Same time report, Spain reports 366 surpluses. And when you fly or move your cursor around the map, you have always this pop-up box, and you can check the number of imbalances, number of shortage or surplus occupation in these countries. Then let's go to the very operational level. You are from, let's go now. I mentioned Austria, I mentioned Belgium. Let's go to the next country. You are from Bulgaria, and you click Bulgaria. Then you can see that you reported 191 shortage occupations. And then on the right-hand side, you see the possible options for matching with other EURES countries. For example, in Spain, reported the similar, same occupations actually what you reported in, and then the list is 165 lines long. So it means that you can have cooperation with Spain because Spain is reporting these occupations as surplus. If you want to select a single occupation, you have options, as I mentioned. You can use the text box, you can type characters here, or you can select immediately one, close, and it means that you, Bulgaria, colleagues from Bulgaria reported bus and tram drivers as shortage. And these countries, Spain, Austria, Greece, and Finland, reported this specific occupation as surplus. So this is the exact statement, the exact proof that there is a room for cooperation, there is a room for improvement, there is a room for cooperation between these countries. I stopped speaking here, maybe one more function. Yes, I'm just checking my notes. Maybe one more function and then a request. Now we have, as you know, that this is the third webinar when we publish. Since we have a lot, this is the third edition of the report. This is our third webinar to inform the EURES network about the report and about the dashboard. And as now we are building up the database, we put a new function. You can see here the year, and you can use this drop-down list. So you can select 22, you can select 23, you can select 24. If you want to know how was the situation in 22, 23, and how the situation is now, so then everything is the same for 22, 23 regarding the functions of the dashboard. So if you would like to know how it was in the past, just select the year and navigate through the report with the same structure. Okay, then before I go to the next part of the presentation, we have a special request. As you know, ECHO is always on the side of the EURES advisors, and we would like to know how you use the report, how you use the dashboard, and in case you have something special that you would like to know better, if you have an idea how we can reshape the function of the dashboard, you need a new button, you need a new function, please not to be shy and report us. Send us an email, send us a message, and we try to follow your logic and we try to invent this idea what is needed from your side. Now I stop my sharing, and then maybe I go back to the chat and asking Federica if we have questions regarding the dashboard, and we go to the second part of the presentation.
First of all, thank you, Robert, for your presentation. It was very clear and very informative. There are a few comments rather than questions in the chat. First of all, there are quite a few comments in which the audience thank you for the work that you've done on this dashboard and on the report, as this is a very useful tool. In terms of the comments, a first comment I see that is that this part of the EURES portal has become more targeted at labor market and mobility experts than to simple job seekers. So some participants noticed that it might not be that user-friendly for job seekers. But I assume that the manual also helps in this regard. So if you want to say something along these lines, and yes, some other comments agree with this. And another comment that I see is that the EURES country report offers information about the magnitude of shortages and surpluses, while the dashboard shows the shortages and surpluses for each occupation by countries without mentioning their magnitude. And this person goes on saying that the occupations with high or medium magnitude should also be taken into consideration for job matching events between the countries, not just the ones with low surpluses and deficits. Don't know whether you want to say something about this?
Yes, thank you, Federica. Both questions are clear. Let's start with the first one from the job seeker perspective. I know this dedicated site of the EURES portal, the dashboard itself is only in in English available, and not all job seekers can speak in English. I understand this. Our aim is to focus and support the EURES advisors, the EURES community, to help job seekers and companies to find each other. So it was our aim. And I understand that it can, from job seeker perspective, it can be difficult to understand and navigate through the data. But please, as I mentioned, if you have any idea, particular, small, great idea, how we can reshape the dashboard in terms of go closer to job seekers, door is welcome, or door is open, and your comments are welcome. So please help us, then we can help the job seekers together to reshape maybe a different function with a new dashboard with different functionalities more close to the job seeker interest. So please help us. Magnitude, I invite also Jakub, as I recall that we launched the data collection XLH last summer to the NCOs, and indeed we requested information regarding the magnitude of the magnitude of single occupation per countries, but I think not all countries given us information about the magnitude, and therefore we decided not to publish only partial data.
Jakub, can I jump in?
Yes, please.
Yes, exactly. That's the case that actually only a limited number of countries report on the magnitude or the severity of the shortages and surpluses, and also it's very hard to display on the dashboard. I think we can also think about this for the future to assign a filter which would basically say that to only restrict it to medium or higher severity occupations, but this would reduce the results and the matching potential. Of course, we will think about this, but we are also reliant on the NCO data and let's say the quality or the fill rate that we are provided with.
Thank you, Jakub. Maybe just one idea, but this came to my mind now. We can consider that we publish a different version of the dashboard on the EURES extranet for a dedicated page, open only for the EURES community with the magnitude. This can happen because as I understand the question, you need to know the magnitude because then you want to know the severity of shortage and surpluses. So if a country can, or 1, 2, 3, I don't know how many countries reported this value, but if some of them reported, maybe this is also helpful for the countries, for the EURES advisors. Let us discuss this together and later, but of course we are open to reshape the dashboard. Federica, further questions, comments?
So I don't see any more questions or comments for the time being, apart from some users saying that it's important that the information is easily, of course, it's easily understandable and clear on the dashboard so that everybody can use it. If there aren't any other questions, we can move forward.
Okay, then I need to share again my screen, and then we go to this page on the full screen. Yes. So as Jakub mentioned at the beginning, we just published a report at 10 o'clock this morning on the ELAS site, and this is a dedicated message to you, to EURES advisor, dear colleagues. I know what you do. I know that you are busy with companies, you are busy with job seekers, and for clear that you have limited time to read. Actually, the report has 130 pages. It is a very long report, I know, and not all you have time to read the report. Therefore, we created a shorter version. This is not a shorter version of the report, but a shorter version how you can use the report, and we highlight in this guide how you can use the report, why it is important to know some definition and what is the added value of the report in your practical life. So this guide has only 8 pages. I show you this with pictures, with maps, and so on. But if you drop the pictures, this is only 4 pages. So I highly recommend you to read these 4 pages. Is not a dangerous task, I think. No risk. And if you go to the report, for example, we defined more than 30 definitions in the report. But in this short guide, if you go to the last page, we use only definition of labor shortage, labor surplus, labor market imbalance, skill shortage, and finally transnational mobility matching potential. This is only 5. So please, if you have very limited time, just go to the last page, read the five term, the 5 definition, and then you can go to the dashboard and navigate through the data, helping your clients. If you have a little bit more time, what I hope, you can read some wonderful testimonials. For example, for sure you know this lady. She's the president of the European Commission, Ursula von der Leyen, and in her 2023 State of the Union speech, she mentioned that in the peak of the tourist season, restaurants and bars in Europe are running reduced hours because they cannot find staff. Hospitals are postponing treatment because of lack of nurses, and 2/3 of European companies are looking for IT specialists, cannot find them. So this is the testimonial why EURES can help. This is a testimonial why the dashboard and the report can help companies and job seekers. Irene Mandel, or head of unit at ELA Information and EURES, given also a testimonial to this report, highlighting that this is the only report. Again, this is the only report that offers Europe-wide view of labor market imbalances, precaries, surpluses, and shortages, and it is designed with you, the EURES advisor, in mind. So you are in our mind when we are drafting the report. EURES connect job seekers to opportunities and employers to talent. This is what EURES do with his human network. And using this report and database, you will be help build a more balanced, resilient European labor market, one that works for everyone. Our colleague Jakub also mentioned something about how to use the transnational matching potential. Thank you, Jakub, for this. And from the practical level, Irma Wieberg also mentioned that how the Dutch network from the Netherlands can use the report, can use the data dashboard in order to plan transnational matching activities, planning work programs, and how the Dutch Public Employment Service used our data when they published their national report. So you can find a lot of insight in this report, and you can find some already published transnational matching in action. This is, for example, what you see on the screen as a nice project between Swedish and Spanish EURES colleagues to create a project for recruitment. And then what I would like to highlight that in this short guide, you can find, for example, the issue of truck drivers. For example, we mentioned in this file that truck drivers is currently a surplus. You listen well, surplus. Truck driver is surplus occupation in Spain. And in other 20 countries, this occupation, truck driver, is in need. So 20 countries reporting truck driver in shortage, and for example, Spain report this occupation in surplus. So if you are EURES advisor in Spain and you have a truck driver in front of you, you can mention to this job seeker that, okay, you have difficulties to find a position in Spain, But look, we have 20 countries in Europe, and your capacity, your experience, your job, your driving license can be used in other countries. A second option, we mentioned plumbers, because we know that, for example, in Ireland, companies are suffering because they don't find plumbers. But in other countries, namely Finland, Greece, and Portugal and Spain, they have more plumbers because plumber is on the surplus list. So EURES colleagues in Ireland, please not to forget to call Finland, Greece, Portugal, and Spain if you would like to help your companies. And the last option is option B, again, Belgium. The Belgian companies in bigger cities has a problem to recruit bus and tram drivers. So Belgian colleagues, why do not contact Austria, Finland, Greece, and Spain? Because they have bus and tram drivers. So please use the report, use the guidance, use the guide, what I'm now presenting you, use the dashboard to find collaboration. And finally, only one word about a free service for you. I know that many of you already used the targeted scheme, the European Online Job Day, but please feel free to use more and more often this free service for you. We have, this framework contract with the contractor, and this service is actually free from you. We can pay also social media promotion for your event. We can help you to translate documentation to your event. Please feel free to use the dedicated online job day about living and working condition in your country, or a specific dedicated session for a dedicated sector, a dedicated occupation, or a regional one. This is also possible. You can cooperate with other countries than the countries where they have, let's say, free or surplus workers. They can recruit workers at least for the event, and the other side you can have your employers who are in need. So this is a matching option also for you. Please feel free to contact us and use the online job day platform. That was my presentation. I stop sharing. I give the floor back to Federica.
Thank you again for this additional part of the presentation. If any of you has questions regarding this presentation, you can post them to the chat or send them via email. So far, I only see one comment related to the other part of the presentation. And the comment says that it could be a good idea to have a more detailed version of the extranet for EURES staff, and a more intuitive version in the portal so that you can tailor it to different types of audience and stakeholders. Let me see if there's any other comments in the chat. Not for the time being. Robert, if you have any questions for the chat, it could also be a good idea to try and ask them to see whether we get any feedback.
You mean I should raise a question?
If you have any. Otherwise, I will wait if any of the participants has any questions at all. Because you mentioned that you are open to getting any feedback with regards to the dashboard and usability.
Indeed. Look, I think we mentioned a lot of things during today's webinar, but we really would like to know how you use the dashboard, what feature we can improve, and if you face any technical issues, there is a bug in the system or something, please do not hesitate to contact us immediately, that we can fix these issues. And also, I think it's a good idea to reshape the dashboard in two directions. Maybe we can work something for the EURES extranet, a more complex one. And also for the experts, let's say for the EURES colleagues, and maybe a simplified version for the job seekers or for companies. Now let's work together, Jakub, next week, and then maybe we can find some solution together.
Perfect. So unless there are any other questions in the chat, I think we can close the webinar. I don't see anything else, but before I do so, I want to first of all thank you, the speakers, for being with us today and for delivering these two very informative and interesting presentations. Wait, there's a question. So before I close, I'm going to read this. Any possibility to have some functionality where the job seeker could introduce his occupation and ask where they can find more jobs? Of course, there is the job search, but Robert, I don't know whether you want to answer this.
Yes, let me read this question. Let me share again my screen.
Mm-hmm.
Dedicated column or option to
A dedicated functionality.
yeah. I understand. I just try to open again my screen. But before I need to close the PDF. Okay, I will go to the dashboard. So then I think this is the okay. So the job seeker has no registration, dedicated registration to the dashboard. So you cannot present yourself, but you can present the occupation. So if the job seeker has the qualification or occupation bus and tram driver, the job seeker can click here and then can go to Bulgaria in this case. In this specific case, bus and tram drivers are in shortage occupations. I'm not sure this is clear for you. I don't know who asked this question, but this is what the job seeker can do. So when you are a EURES advisor and you are advising a job seeker, you can teach him or her how to use the dashboard using the manual or a dedicated session, and then she or he can use the dashboard selecting the individual occupation, what he or she has, then immediately can have the information if this is shortage or surplus occupation and where, in which countries they have more chance to work. So this is the logic what I can use or answer. Jakub, maybe you have another idea. I'll stop sharing. Or then we can wait for a chat if this is clear for Daniel.
Yes.
Okay, Jakub is reporting that he agrees with my comments. Thank you, Jakub.
Perfect. So unless there are more comments, this time I'm closing the webinar. Again, no, Robert, do you have
Federica,
something to
maybe
add? Yes.
one more idea. I'm a little bit creative now. If colleagues, if you need some dedicated sessions or more sessions regarding the dashboard or report at European level or at country level, we are ready to cooperate with you and have a shorter session and answer national requests or populate the report for your needs.
So I see another comment saying that it would be nice to have this dashboard embedded in the EURES portal. And someone else replying that it is already. So can you clarify?
So the first question, if the data dashboard is already on the EURES portal, the answer is yes.
Indeed.
So we have what I showed you I'm going to share again my screen. What I showed you is the EURES portal. So this is not anymore the demo or test version. We are on the EURES portal. You see the link here.
And Robert, we have added the link to the chat as well so that the audience can access it directly.
Yeah. And then I see the question from Anna Margarida. No comments. I like your comments, Anna Margarida. I agree with this. Let's work together how we can reshape the dashboard from the job seeker perspective. Keep it more simple and short.
Perfect. Okay. Robert, anything else you want to add in this regard? Okay, good. So thank you everyone for attending this webinar. Before you leave, I would kindly ask you to fill in the evaluation questionnaire that will pop on the screen in a few minutes. This will help us improve future webinars. Also, if you have any specific suggestions, you can also add them to the evaluation questionnaire. And once again, I want to thank the speakers, Robert and Jakub, for attending this webinar and for their contributions. So thank you so much, and see you all at the next opportunity. Okay. So thanks a lot, and the evaluation questionnaire should be on the screen now.